Hello, I'm Matthew Woods. Did you know that there has been nearly a 400% increase in drilling applications surrounding national parks? Industry is encroaching, and it's thanks to the previous administration's removal of vital protections. Land directly outside the parks is being leased and sold at an unprecedented rate, and this is placing our parks under incredible stress. These parks are already under a lot of duress thanks to climate change, and we must do whatever we can to protect our parks from complete collapse. So, it is my goal in this presentation to convince you to take direct action. Demand a buffer zone implementation by participating in civic engagement processes. So why is it important? Why do we need buffer zones? Well, it's mainly for the protection of migratory animals. Migratory animals are particularly sensitive to changes in their migration path, and if we don't have a buffer zone implemented, well, if the migratory animal leaves and they aren't able to find their way back, they may end up perishing. And if that happens, if we lose a whole population of the species, well, it could start this domino effect. It could start a chain reaction. If we lose one species, then we may lose another species dependent on that species, and so on and so forth. And if that happens, we may see a complete ecological collapse. And if we see a complete ecological collapse, then we see the loss of our parks entirely. So what are buffer zones? Well, according to the UN, a buffer zone is an area peripheral to a specific protected area where restrictions on resource use and special development measures are undertaken in order to enhance the conservation value of a protected area. So what exactly would it look like? We have a few international examples of what a buffer zone would look like. The first one we have is located in Nepal, the second one in Peru, and the third one in Canada. So which animals will benefit? We already kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's go into some specifics. So specifically, migratory animals would benefit, and those migratory animals being the pronghorn antelope. These are native to the area that Badlands National Park covers, and they have the longest migration in North America, except for the caribou. Then we have the monarch butterflies. Not all monarchs go to Mexico. Some stop in Muir Woods or Los Padres. And then we have the mule deer. Mule deer is a very important animal. It's known as the deer of the West. They've been known to migrate up to 242 miles at a time. And according to the Mule Deer Foundation, they are one of the most economically and socially important animals in North America. And this is because of the hunters and outdoor outfitters dependent on them. They're dependent on their livelihood and the health of the population of the mule deer. So then we have the economic question. Some skeptics may be reluctant. They may say, well, won't we miss out on industry creating new jobs, bringing new jobs to these places? Well, I say that if we lose the parks, then we lose a lot of jobs as well. I say we lose more jobs than industry would be creating in the first place. The National Park Service employs around 28,000 people, and that's the only hard figure I can find, but think about all the small towns around the parks that are dependent on the parks for tourism. If the parks disappear, well, then there's no more tourism, and you see the complete economic collapse of these small towns, which is a lot more destructive than simply not creating new jobs. So where do we need buffer zones specifically here in the United States? Well, preferably I would like to see buffer zones at all parks, but the places they are most needed are Grand Teton National Park, Chaco Culture National Historic Park, Canyonlands National Park, and Sequoia National Park. And as I click through these next slides, pay attention to all the red areas. All the red areas are the places that you can see that land has either already been leased or is going to be leased to industry. So we have Grand Teton, Chaco Culture, Canyonlands, and Sequoia. So what can you do? Well, I'm urging you to call our senators, demand the implementation of a buffer zone. If we get enough support, then we can convince them that Georgians care. And this is because the national parks are run by a federal agency. They can be controlled by Congress. So if we can affect our senators' opinions, then we can affect the policy on the parks. So here's the contact information for our first senator, Jon Ossoff, and then our second, Raphael Warnock. And if you don't want to take the representative approach, then you can always take the nonprofit approach by donating to the National Parks Conservation Association. This is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the protection of our parks. Thank you.